everybody, this is a picture of Godafoss, which is right on the top of Iceland, near Kiri, or Kiri, however you say it. I've taken quite a few photos of it, but I've not edited this one, so I thought, as we're all probably housebound at the moment, I'd give it a go and just take you through the process. So when I took the shot, it was quite a dull day, the sky was fairly flat, so I did choose to put on 2 graduated filters, which gives us this dark look there, but it also darkens these sides down a little bit, and we've got a nice bit of foreground there. It took a bit of getting through everybody to get there, but it was worth it. So first off, let's just work out if it was level or not, which we can do just by clicking on the crop tool, and if you click at the side like that, as if you're going to rotate it, you can have a little sort of play like that. But what I'm looking at really is a line across here, because that's going to be fairly flat. That's nearer to me, so it's going to look higher, but I think that's about right there-ish. Don't think it has to be nailed on to, you know, to be totally level, but I mean, I guess you could get the angle tool, but you know, let's assume those two are about the same height. So we could say that. Okay. Now, to me, that looks a little bit cockeyed, so I'm going to just maybe do that. See, this sort of thing is very easy when you've got the seaside, which is always flat, or a lake, which, well, actually, a lake isn't always, it's flat in the water, but if it's a curved end, you know, it will look at different heights in the photograph. Right, so let's say we've got that crop. I want the white balance. Probably let's assume that the water down here is pure white, because it's all so I'm going to click on there. So what I've done, I've got the white balance tool, or W, and just clicked into that. So that's the sort of white balance we're after. And now I'm going to, what we call, open the shadows a bit. So this is a shadow slider, and you can see it's kind of working on bits of it. It doesn't really do us any favours on the foreground, because it starts to look a bit insipid, but on that background it looks good. On these bits here you can start to see bits of grass and things there. Okay, and now I'm just going to have a little play with the highlights, see if we can pull a bit more detail out of the waterfall itself. So I'm just going to pull that down a bit. So now we've made it look a bit flatter than it should be. What I'm going to do is press my Alt key with the white slider. I'm just going to drag it to the left, the right rather, until something starts to appear. If you go too far, you get that sort of thing. I'll show you what it's doing. So it's appearing there, so let's put it back so it disappears. And that now means that the brightness of the whites is, that means that bit out there is pretty much white. Okay, and we'll do the same with the black. I don't think we'll have to go very far with this. If we just click on the black, and this time we go the other way, you can see it's clipping there already. It's touching. Okay, right, so now let's go for a bit of clarity. So this is like a local contrast. So if you look at the picture, it starts to come to life. If you take it to negative, it goes very soft, which is great for lots of things, but not for a waterfall shot. And if we have a look in the foreground, let's just show you what it does. So it's like a mid-tone contrast. That's what it really does. It makes the middle tones a bit more punchy. Now we've got 2 other sliders in the presence. If you want more texture, more detail, let's look at this rock here, that one I'm hovering over. We add texture. See what happens. It gets, so this brings out detail. Okay, so I might add a little bit of texture to it, not much, maybe 20. And now the final one in this area here is the dehaze. And what this tries to do is pull detail out of flat areas. So if you look at the sky, that was fairly flat, as in not a lot of detail going on. So if we just add a bit of that, it starts to bring these details out. So what we've done, we've opened the shadows up, we've brought the highlights down a bit so we could see through the waterfall, and then we've added quite a bit of this sort of stuff here. I think we've probably gone a bit too far. I might bring the clarity and texture back a little bit. It's just these rocks are starting to look a little bit fake, which is what we're trying to avoid. Okay, whilst we're still in Lightroom then, what else can we do? We can have a little play with colourful stuff. So let's brighten up these bits of moss and things so they jump out a bit more. So I've clicked on this luminance and this little tool here, and now all you need to do is click on a thing you want brighter, keep your finger down and go up. If you want it darker, you go down. But this will just bring these little pops of light out everywhere, and you can do the same for saturation. So if you want more of that colour, you can see what happens. So all of a sudden we've got these little bright pops of light. If I look at the sky, I think the sky is going to be blue, so if you wanted a bluer sky you could go up. It's blue and purple mixed. If you wanted a plainer sky, I think I quite like a bit of blue, so let's go there. Right, anything else in that? No. So let's carry on down. If you wanted to add colour to the highlights and shadows, we won't bother doing that. How about let's have a look at sharpening. Generally you want to do the sharpening with a brush. I'm going to maybe do that in Photoshop afterwards, but if you wanted just to add a bit more sharpening, it just puts detail into the shot for you. So if we take the sharpening off, on, off, on. Cool. I've shot this at ISO 100, so there shouldn't be any noise. Have a quick look at the sky, there's no noise there, so I'm going to leave the noise reduction off. Now I'm going to quit the lens corrections. Might as well always do that in your photos, just for free. I notice how it's brightened the edges up a little bit. What we're going to do, we're going to darken those down in a minute. What we're going to do is go to our post-crop vignette. I'm just going to add about -20. I'm going to make the midpoint quite small, maybe 20, and the feather all the way to the top, and that just draws the eye back towards the centre of the shot. So it's taking your eye away from these edges and bringing you up to that central bit. Right, how are we getting on? So we've got the contrast slider here. This is just a taste now. We've done all that stuff, and I'm just literally tweaking highlights down a bit. What does it look like? Highlights up? No. Highlights down? Yeah, looks better, doesn't it? Whites? Okay, so that's recovered a little bit there. That's good. Right. So I think I've got as far as I can in Lightroom. So what I'm now going to do, I'm going to press Control and E, and this exports it into Photoshop, which is just in this next pane here. There you go, pops up. Right, so we've now got a lovely raw file over in Photoshop. What we're going to do next is, now you can, if you want to get luminosity masks, there's an extensions thing which people don't know about in Photoshop, and they've got dozens of little tools which you can use. If you go to find extensions on Exchange, click on that, you can have a look through. There's loads of things. You can pay for some and some are free, and there's one called luminosity masks which I use quite a bit, and it just installs this little box here for you, and I create masks. And as you see, all of a sudden my channels, which is this little tab here where you can see channels. If you go to window, you've got all these different windows you can have open, and channels is one of them. Now it's got lights, 5 darks, 5 midtones, and some more. And the idea is that if you press Control and click on any one of those, it will load into a selection the area of brightness. So if we wanted just to play with the very bright bits, you see this one here, lights 4, we Control click, it selects just the very brightest bits there. If we Control click on lights 5, it'll be a smaller bit, lights 3. So lights 1 is essentially most of the light bits. Lights 2 will be a bit the brighter bits, brighter still, brightest. And this means, and with darks, darkish, pretty dark, darker, really dark, almost black, and then midtones, well, that's just stuff in the middle, and you don't always get a big selection with that. So what do we want to do? Well, I think I want to maybe make these lights, let's just get them selected. I'm going to go to Curves tool, well, adjustment layer, and now watch what happens. If I drag it down or drag it up, this curve is only affecting the bright bits. What it's done, it's created a mask. Well, you can't see it, but it's created a mask, and then it's only going to affect the bits you've selected. Well, it's selected those bright bits. It leaves the dark bits alone. So what I want to do, I want to brighten these dark bits up here. So let's go to darks, maybe really darks, something like that. I'm going to go Curves, and I'll just maybe put a little bit of life into that. Yeah. About maybe there. Right. Now, what I don't want is it to happen everywhere. So this is how you do it. What you do is you want to mask this layer. So you can create what's called a group. You press Ctrl G on your layer. So if you watch down here, G, and it creates a group. And on the group, you can create a mask. So I'm going to press my mask, which is this button here, add layer mask, and I'm going to press Alt key. If you press it now, it gives you a mask which is white, which is, it will show everything. And now if you press Ctrl I to invert it, it gives you a black one. So that's with the thing showing, and that's with the thing hidden. So let's hide everything. Now we can brush onto this. So if you go B for brush, and you can use your brackets keys to increase and decrease the size of the brush. I'm going to lower the flow, and now I'm just going to brush in the bits, the dark bits, which I think could do with a little bit more light. Note my flow is only 20%, so it's not going to be flat out. Here we go. Just these bits which seem to have clipped out, like they're here. So we're in charge of where that happens. Now if we wanted to, we can just show you and hide where it's gone. Well, we've gone over there, look. So what you can do, if you've gone over, you press X to reverse the brush. I'm just brushing that back. So if we hide that again, there we go. Right. Now I want to breathe a bit more life into the shot, so I'm going to close down that, and I'm now going to do a curves. Now I want to really push the shot in this bottom bit down here. So let me so it looks a little bit extreme there, doesn't it? But what I'm looking at is this area down the bottom. Okay, so now these all look a bit more interesting, don't they? We've got this layer. I don't want that to affect everywhere. I just want it to affect where I'm brushing. So again, we hide the mask, Control I to invert a mask. We get ourselves a white brush, like that. I'm just going to brush some contrast into it and see what's happening. Okay. Now I think the brush is maybe flowing a bit too fast. What I want to do is just skim over the water just to see what happens there, because we're brightening the brights and darkening the darks quite a lot. Okay, can you see that? Let's just show. So maybe a bit here. How about these areas? Yeah, I think it's bringing out a lot of detail there. It's fairly extreme, actually, is what we're doing. You know, the curves. So next, what I'm going to do with the luminosity selection, I'm going to see if I've got one which just picks out these bright bits on the waterfall. So if we go number 3, doesn't quite get there, does it? Number 4, right? Number 5, that's most of it, isn't it? So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to give curves a go, because what I want to do is do a similar thing on the water. Okay, how's that looking? So let's just fade that in and out. Right, we're kind of losing a bit of detail in it, aren't we, there? Although there's not a lot of detail there, so maybe if we just make the curves a bit steeper. It's very marginal what you can do with this, really, because I wanted really to have these areas here a little bit more contrasty. Let's just kill that for a sec, and I'll go back to the other way of doing it. So I'm going to darken and brighten like that. Right, and then we invert that by Control I. I'm just gonna, with a very its flow is 10. There we go. So what I'm after is more contrast here. Okay, let's switch that off, on, off, on, off, on, off, and then we can, now we've applied it, we can change we switched it off there. We can change this mask, we can change the effect of the curves. It's going up and down. So I quite like the drama it introduces when you've got a bit more of the dark in there. Now, if we wanted to use this bright curve we did before, I think how do you flatten it? Is there a, maybe there isn't a way of flattening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see. I can maybe bring those whites down a little bit, if anything. Okay. What does it look like before and after? Just taming them a bit. Okay. Right, and let's do a bit of drama in the sky. So again, curves. Right, so again it's gone a little bit, oops, let's delete that, can we delete that? Don't know how you delete points, actually, is that? Anyway, you can grab all of these points and drag them to the end. Right, Control, there we go. I'm just gonna add this to the sky. So it's all about adding a bit of drama now. It's Godafoss, it's about God. Okay. So let's have a quick look back. We started off there, a little bit of brightness. We lightened up those dark areas a bit. Then we added a contrast to the foreground. Just added a little darkening of the bright bits. Added a bright sky and some contrast to the waterfall itself. Now colour. I'm not a massive fan of this colour here. So let's have a quick look what we can do. Hue saturation. And what we can do is we can grab hold of this little icon here, click on something and drag left and right to change the colour of it. So I don't like that yellow. Oh, it's changing the saturation, right? Okay. My bad there. Let's just leave it where it was. And I'm thinking I want a turquoise colour. Maybe a bit more blue. And I don't want it that colourful. Right, now you can pretty much guess what I'm going to do now. I'm going to get rid of the effect by inverting the mask, and then I'm going to paint over it. Because if you noticed, that colour had affected, infected almost, everything else, which was yellow. So I'm just going to give it a slightly more attractive colour. Like that, just by drawing over it. There we go. And maybe even go into the falls themselves. Again, all I'm just drawing onto the actual mask here, nothing else. Okay. Right, so it's a bit more attractive than the sort of yellow. I mean, the water comes straight from a glacier, so that's where it gets that yellow colour. Just before, after. Yeah, just a bit nicer, isn't it? I mean, there's a little bit of yellow poking through here and there, which doesn't really affect it badly, does it? I've gone over a bit of moss there, so I'll just go around these edges, make sure we don't have any weird blue moss. There's the odd bit here and there. Look. Right. If anything now, I don't know what you're thinking, but maybe those bright bits at the bottom are a little bit on the bright side. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to clean up these masks. There's a button which just deletes them all, and now we've got this new shot. I'm going to just create a layer from what, just copy everything, merge everything, and create a new layer, which is Control Alt Shift and E, and then create masks. So that'll just take account of all the new bits and bobs we've done. I'm going to start all the light bits at the bottom and just darken them down so it doesn't look quite so bright. Let's have a look. Maybe mid-tones. Right. So we've got a selection there. Let's just go to curves. Just see what happens if we drag that down a bit. Or maybe just drag I'll kill it all together, but let's try that. Because there's one thing you never really see in nature, and that's a brighter sky than the ground. How's that looking? What do you think? Of course, we can press Ctrl G to put it into a group, Alt and Mask to create ourselves a little group, and maybe we don't want it to affect this area down here too much. I quite like the contrast we added, so we'll leave that alone. But let's darken down maybe these areas here. Let me just go back to the control and we'll just give it fairly severe. Drag down, and now don't want it to affect these bits because we've brightened those up. It's just this river really. So remember, if you want to swap between white and black for drawing on masks, you just have your finger over the X key. So if you want to brighten up, you delete some of the mask. If you want to darken down, you add white. Okay. So there you go. Once you've done the mask and stuff, you can get rid of that layer, and you can go back and play with the hue saturation if you wanted to. I'm just going to reduce the saturation. It looks a bit weird being so colourful. Like that. Okay. Now, if you wanted to add a vignette, I'd probably do that in Lightroom afterwards. So when you're happy, and that's probably a lot longer than I would normally spend on it, just so I can show you a few cool things, but it's mainly curves. I don't know if you notice that it's mainly curves. Oh, there's one last really cool thing you can do. If you just create a duplicate of everything, Control Alt Shift E. If you want one of those dark moody shots, you can just select the blend mode, multiply, and then with the opacity go to 0, and then just bring it back, gradually go up, and you'll get to a point where it just looks really dramatic. Something like that. That's the history. Cool. And then Control S to save that away, and it'll pop back up in Photoshop in a minute, in Lightroom rather. Saving this to an external hard drive, so it's just taking a little longer, because I would imagine with all these edits it's quite a large file. So let's just give it a moment. Oh, have we got some action? 69% saved. It's saving as a PSD file, so it retains all the information from these layers. Wow, that is taking its time. There we go. So if we close that now, pop back over here. There we go. So we've got the Lightroom as far as we get in Lightroom. And we did a bit of Photoshop there. So it's really down to you where you go with these things. I mean, for some of these black bits here might be a little bit on the dark side, but yeah, it's a dramatic waterfall. If you wanted to do the vignette at the end, just go down, find it, and then there we go. Cropping. If I was going to crop it at all, I'd probably grab all of this top corner, because the water's flowing from top left to bottom right. I'd probably do that if I was going to crop it, but I quite liked it where it was really, maybe a little bit down. Like that. And that's a long-winded way of editing a shot, but I hope there's some tips in there which will be useful. Cheers.